Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome to another God of War video. Today, after our in-depth exploration of both the Nordic and Greek pantheon, it felt only right that we take a step back, and we talk about a weapon that has become synonymous with the series, as the devastation the weapon has caused across both the Norse and Greek pantheon is the stuff of legends, and that is the Blades of Chaos. Now, while symbolic to the series, the weapon itself represents a lot of different things to its main character, Kratos, and not all of them are very good. The blade themselves can really be described as the physical manifestation of his sins and regrets. Whilst they have been an instrument in his bloody war against the furies and the gods themselves, they are also the weapon that is responsible for his greatest mistake. So today, we will be talking about the creation of the Blades of Chaos, what exactly happened whilst Kratos used them, and what is the legacy they leave behind. But before we do so, as always everyone, I would super appreciate it if we could get this video to about 500 likes. It's a fantastic way of supporting the channel, as well as this video, as it gives it that extra kick right out the gate. And if you are excited for God of War Ragnarok, and need someone to scratch that itch, please don't forget to subscribe, as well as tick that bell to stay up to date with everything going on here. But now, let's begin, shall we? Now, the Blades of Chaos are truly a very unique weapon, even in the God of War universe. Unlike many that were forged by the hand of man, the blades themselves were crafted by the hands of Olympus's first God of War, Ares, son of Zeus and Hera. Made in the darkest depths of the underworld, the Blades of Chaos were created with the purpose of enslaving a being under the will of Ares. But this weapon wouldn't be given to anyone. It would only bind those that Ares saw as worthy to serve as his puppet. Which leads to the question as to why Ares would create this. Well, during this time, Ares had a very on and off relationship with the gods, whilst still a welcomed member of the pantheon. His thirst for war and destruction put him at odds with his family. His ambitions for war and devastation eventually caused him to spiral out of favor with his brothers and sisters. Even his own father, Zeus, showed open disgust and disappointment for the monster he had become. Because of this, Ares would actively try to find a way to topple Olympus, and his first attempt was by trying to sire the marked child of prophecy, someone destined to bring down the end of Olympus. And he would do this by secretly having an affair with the Fury Queen Alecto, hoping that by doing so, the child the two would sire would be the said child of destruction. But unfortunately, Ares did not get his wish, and the fruits of his labor were nothing but sour. But in his failure, he would find another way of achieving his goal. He would forge the Blades of Chaos, a weapon designed to not only brand the servant of Ares, but one that would curse them to his servitude. We will elaborate on that curse a little bit later on, as it is tied into a pseudo comic book series. Now, it is worth mentioning, the Blades of Chaos were also possibly created as a way to contest with Zeus's own Blade of Olympus, a weapon that toppled the Titans, and something Ares knew about quite well. With the Blades of Chaos now in hand, Ares would bide his time, as he knew the sort of warrior he was looking for would wage wars throughout the lands of Greece. And eventually, his gaze settled on a general of Sparta, Kratos. Having learnt of his infamous massacres across the lands, as well as his tactical mind and leadership, Ares knew the potential that lied within such a warrior. Thus, he waited for the inevitable to happen, that Kratos' own ambitions would lead to his downfall, and this came during Kratos' war against King Ulrich and his barbarian army. In a final act of defiance, Kratos would swear a life of eternal servitude to Ares in exchange for the destruction and defeat of the barbarian army. So, in one single swoop, the endless wave of barbarian hordes would fall over dead, with Kratos now a slave to the likes of the God of War. But this was no simple mantle bestowed upon him, as his flesh would be seared with the burning chains of the blade. Kratos was now officially bound by his oath to the likes of Ares. But despite his enslavement, Kratos did for the most part remain very faithful to his family, trying to retain whatever humanity he had left in order to stay in touch with them. But little did Kratos know, he was not only sowing the seeds of his own fate, but the curse and legend of the Blades of Chaos. As time passed by, the endless wars and killing sprees Kratos was sent on would turn into a single blur. The lives of men, women, and children would turn into a bloody fog of red, and Ares knew what he was doing. By removing Kratos' sanity, it would turn him blind to the actions he was performing, and eventually this would lead to Kratos taking the life of both his wife and child. Here is what would forever be Kratos' greatest failure, and as punishment for his sins, his body would be engraved with the ashes of his loved ones. These events would cause the Blades of Chaos to become legend, having now been known as the weapon held by Ares' brute puppet. His shame would be spread throughout the lands, meeting the ears of other gods beyond the pantheon. Kratos, and Kratos alone, is responsible for his own downfall, as it is his own hubris and pride that sent him down this path. His tainted warrior bloodline and lineage meant that he was always supposed to be something much more, but little did he or anyone actually know it would come at the expense of those that he held dear. From this point, Kratos would fall into a void of depression, even attempting to disassociate himself from the god of war. But by breaking his oath, he fell victim to the Furies, keeper of oaths and breaker of wills. The trio would attempt to poison the mind of Kratos, healing his mind with visions of those he loved. But upon being freed by one of their own, Orcos, Kratos would lead a bloody crusade of destruction against the Furies and Ares' enslavement. With the Blades of Chaos in tow, he would kill each of the primordials before finally turning his eyes towards Ares. Here, Kratos would enroll himself as a weapon of the Olympian gods, performing incredible feats of strength in their name. He hoped that in time, he may eventually be granted the prize of Ares' head, and that wish would be granted in the very first game. Still scarred from his past, Kratos is forced to relive the suffering and horrors he committed as a puppet of Ares. But in time, he's able to persevere through the quest and does hunt the god down. This eventually leads to their climactic battle, and in one single swing, Kratos would kill the god of war. Now, probably to the surprise of many, this actually marks the end of the Blades of Chaos for a very long time, as following the death of Ares, Kratos actually puts the weapon to rest, as symbolically, it represents the end of his arc as a weapon of Ares, a man wronged by a god and twisted beyond his imagination. So by actually laying the Blades of Chaos to rest, it is seen as a way for him to ascend to godhood, and it somewhat does allow him to let the flames of his past finally flicker out. But of course, in the grand scheme of things, the fight is never truly over for the Spartan, as he does go to war against Olympus in the next game. But in 2 and 3, instead of the Blades of Chaos, Kratos utilizes the Blades of Athena and later the Blades of Exile, both weapons that have been given to him by Athena, and again, much like the Blades of Chaos, the Blades of Athena could be seen as something that is representative of his ascension to godhood. But in also saying that, the weapons are near identical to the Blades of Chaos, following the fall of Olympus. We learn in a loose comic book tie-in, God of War Fallen God, that the Blades of Chaos somehow have additional abilities that we didn't see in the first 3 games. And that is, that they are bound to the soul of Kratos. Thus, wherever he may run or even hide, the Blades will continue to hunt him, haunt him, if you would, an omen of his past that he will never escape from. Unfortunately, the comic run doesn't entirely elaborate on how or why this is possible, as it is only 6 issues I believe, but if we are to theorize, it can be softly implied that the curse may have been a part of Kratos' deal with Ares, as the god of war may have foreseen the possibility of the Spartan trying to run away from Greece. With the comics out the way, this now brings us up to the present time period, with the Spartan being miles away from home within the lands of the Norse gods. During this time, much has changed with the relocation of the exiled god. He had a wife, the giantess Laufey, and together they sired a child, Loki, or as known by his birth name, Atreus. For the longest time, Kratos kept his past hidden, not wanting to burden his new family with the knowledge of who he was. But it was Faye that would be the first to come to know the true identity of just who Kratos was. Atreus, on the other hand, would be kept in the dark. But it wasn't out of fear of the cycle of patricide, but instead, it was from shame, knowing that Atreus might see him as a monster for the horrible actions he had committed. In fact, actively throughout the story, whilst subtle at certain points, we even see Kratos try to hide the scars of the Blades of Chaos, turning his back to Atreus as they prepare to bury Faye. Not only does this scene really encapsulate the distance between father and son, but the agonizing lengths that Kratos has to go at in order to hide his past life. But as we all do know, the Spartan can only run away from the past for so long, because he must confront the sins of his past. It's why the scene from the 2018 game is so incredible and so layered on so many different levels. It's not just a bit of nostalgia bait, but Kratos has to actively dig up the monster of his past so his son can have a future. In his eyes, the Blades are responsible for taking the life of both Lysandra and Calliope, but now under his influence, under his control, maybe, just maybe, he can finally fix the biggest mistake he ever made. Even whilst Athena mocks him for playing father and teacher, he knows that for the first time in a very long while, he is the one controlling his fate. No god is guiding him, no one is tainting his hand. His intent is pure and simple. Go to Helheim, tear out the heart of the Bridgekeeper, and finally, cure his son. That is what allows this scene to feel so incredible, because you feel the weight of the Blades of Chaos. You see the legacy behind them. You don't even have to have played the previous games to know that these things are special, and they are like that for a number of different reasons. It is something from the past that was long forgotten to the Spartan, but even when they are reclaimed, Kratos remarks that these blades are his and his alone. This reinforces the damage they have caused Kratos ever since he had picked them up. And it does actually help that it fits into the themes of the 2018 game, as there is a very heavy emphasis on the themes of family and inheritance. For the case of Kratos and Atreus, the sins of a father. One of God of War's messages is that fate is unwritten, and that any man or god has the choice and opportunity to forge their own future. The monster that Kratos once was will not be who Atreus will become. Thus begins the defiance of both godhood and the laws that are tied around the cursed cycle of patricide, a long theme that has existed in the God of War series. I hope you have enjoyed this one and learnt more by doing so. This was a really fun deep dive of the Blades of Chaos, as they are such an iconic part of the series. Honestly, I'm surprised and slightly offended that I didn't make this video sooner, whilst the new era may be ushered in with the Leviathan axe, which hey, I love it, I literally have one. We simply cannot deny just how insanely iconic and cool the Blades of Chaos are. They symbolize so much about the series, furies, and you can tell just by looking at them where they come from. The blades mean a lot to the series, as well as Kratos' character. So I hope today we are able to shine a bit of a light on it and the themes that do surround it. They are as beautiful as they are dangerous, horrific in their own destruction. So I really hope you had as much fun watching this as I did making it. And who knows, if you like this video, I may decide to do more like this in the future. So if you are at all interested, please let me know down in the comments below. But for now, this has been it for me. So as always everyone, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting as Ragnarok comes for us all. Take care everyone, I'll see you soon.